I'm bound for the queen. Bowing for the queen. I'm bound for the queen.
Hello and welcome back to A Court of Wings and Romance. I'm Jen, also known as your Bookish High Lady, and we have an extra special guest today, the one and only Holly Huntress. How are you, Holly? I'm good. Getting through, ready to start a new week, but here we are. All right, so I just finished your new book that comes out, Forbidden Waves, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it so much. So let's talk about it. How did you come up with the story?
So the story actually came to me in a dream. It was a
Okay.
very specific scene, it was mermaids and pirates working together against a greater evil, which I determined was the Siren Queen for the book. Yeah, and so I decided that scene is actually going to be incorporated into book 2. Some fight scene.
Exciting. How did you come up with the characters themselves?
So there's the four main characters, and then so Viv and Finn were specific characters that were in my dream. There was a lion shifter who was Finn, and then the mermaid who was Viv. So they came to me in that dream. And then with Jamie and Leah, it was just kind of I don't really even know. They were there right from the beginning too. But they just I just wanted to do a best friend kind of dynamic too, because I always love writing friendships just as much as I writing a romance. Yeah, so I wanted them to kind of have that pairing off, and yeah.
I loved it. Yeah, Leah and Jamie were my favorites, I will say. Yeah. They're my favorites. I love the other two as well, but there's something about the two of them that I'm like, you were just the cutest, and I love it. Okay, let's see. So at what point in your life did you kind of decide that you wanted to become a writer, and this was your dream and your passion?
It was kind of in high school is when I started writing books. And I started, it was actually Stephenie Meyer's Twilight is what inspired me to write books. And the first story that I wrote was pretty much just Twilight rewritten. So obviously that one got scrapped. But yeah, so it all stemmed from there. And then I had to do a senior project, and I had already started writing a book. So I was like, well, why don't I just finish this book for my senior project? And so that was actually a book that I have since unpublished, but it's called Haunting Memories. And I do plan on republishing it, but just needed a lot of work.
Yeah.
Just
to say, so you have 3 series right now. You have the Unbound series, Broken Angels, and now this Forbidden Waves. Am I correct? Yeah. I didn't miss any, did I?
Nope. Yeah, those are all 3.
Okay. So if you had to choose between the 3, which would be your absolute favorite?
I would have to say it's always what I'm currently writing. So Forbidden Waves is kind of in the number 1 spot right now for me.
Yeah.
But of course I love Unbound. I had a lot of growth from the Broken Angel series, and I have people tell me that too who have read all my books. They'll be like, your writing grew so much, and I'm for the Unbound series. So I do just love that one as well, just because I feel I've come so far. Yeah.
So Unbound is actually the first one I've read of yours. So I'm a little partial to it, but I did absolutely love this one too. So I kind of get where you're coming from, because I mean, I didn't write them, but I'm in the same boat with which ones were my favorites so far. I have read the first 2 for Unbound, and then I just read the Broken Angels. So I have to get into the other ones, but I was like, I need to read this first. I'm reading this one right now. It looks so good. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So yeah. From your new book, who was your favorite character to write and why?
I think was my favorite to write. I put a lot of myself into like Leah and Viv, so it's kind of like
Mhm.
both because they're kind of very different characters, and so it's kind of both sides of the coin. But I put a lot of like my own fears and anxieties into Viv,
Mhm.
and I just really loved like her character and like where she's going to go, like her growth and everything that's going to happen.
Awesome. Love that. Which character was the most demanding or you felt like you had to pay the most attention to writing?
Finn, just because he has
Mhm.
a very like interesting story because he is like the most fearsome pirate. So like to like I didn't dive too deep into his past in the first book. Like this, I had planned on always making it more like prevalent in the second book, like
Mhm.
with everything that happens with him and the people he comes across in book one. Like there's going to be a lot more development for him as well. But he definitely was like a character that I wanted to focus a lot on and make sure I got him right, so that he came across so as like kind of fearsome, but also you see like that softer side of him. So you're kind of wondering like, okay, when is the flip gonna switch kind of thing, so that we see like
Mhm.
that other side. But yeah, he was definitely one of the most demanding characters.
What did you enjoy most about writing this book specifically?
It was my first time doing new adult because all my other series are young adult. So it's definitely
Mhm.
fun to have to be able to just kind of have that freedom to go a little deeper, like into the open door scenes rather than the closed door romance scenes, and like
Mhm.
just like exploring different things that I'd never done before, and like having a little like they're older characters as well, so having like more like grown up problems, I guess, rather than my younger characters and all my other books are like 18. So they're like, it's still kind of fun and like fluffy, and then it's a little deeper and not quite dark, but just like more intense.
Did you find that that was more difficult to write? Or did you find it was like a little bit easier because it was more like not your everyday, they're pirates, but like, you know what I mean?
I felt like, because I am like I just turned 30, so like writing characters that are more my age, like it comes easier because you don't have to be like, oh well, would they really talk like this? Like they're only 18 now. Like would they
Yeah.
actually be finding that love of their life or whatever? Like diving into these things so fast. But yeah, so like being the age of my characters now, I'm kind of like growing with my writing, I guess. But yeah, so it was a little bit easier in that regard. And then like it was a little bit hard to for the first time actually go into the open door romance scenes because I'd never done it before. I'd always just been like, okay, and
Right.
then scene. So now it's like trying to find like my rhythm and figuring out like what words you should use and what words you shouldn't use, and like trying not to be too cringy and all that stuff. But it was definitely a
Yeah.
lot of fun for sure.
See, I don't know that I could do it. I love to say that I could do it, but I don't know that I could like physically write it all out. I love reading it. You know, I
Yeah,
love reading it, but I don't know that I could be the one to sit and write, which I guess is why I'm not a writer. So, what along those lines, what is your process? Like describe your writing process and how you kind of go from having this dream of this type of story to having the published book.
when I first started writing, I did not outline at all. I just kind of went along with the story and let it lead the way. But I've since found like it is a lot easier if I do at least have some sort of outline to start, especially for a series, because I want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
I'm answering all those questions and like continuing certain things throughout. So I, for like both Unbound and Forbidden Waves, both came from dreams. So I had like that basic, like this is a scene that I want to happen kind of thing. So it's just very first I figure out like, okay, where is this gonna happen? So I do like the whole world building thing, and then I start writing down a bunch of like fantasy names because names is like the hardest thing And I do
Oh, I'm
actually,
sure.
yeah, I tend to have some difficulty. Like, they all sound the same. They all end in A, or like they all end in like or something.
Hmm.
So I always, you'll see that theme throughout my books, but like trying to figure out, like, making sure you're not using too many of the similar names and all that stuff. So I try to
Hmm.
make a nice list of those. And then, like, once I have the basic bones, then I start writing, because I can't, like, foresee the ending right away. I never,
Hmm.
like, been able to do that because it always changes too. Like, I had a very clear
Right.
ending in mind for Broken Angel series, and it just totally went off the rails by the end of book one. So it's like,
Hmm.
I'm definitely more of like the middle ground between the pantser and the plotter.
Yeah, I always wondered how like that worked. Like if authors like went into it knowing like this is where it's going to end, and then if like the characters just took like a life of their own, and you're like, okay, well that is not what I
Yeah,
expected.
yeah.
Which can be great, but it can also be very scary.
I know, yeah. Sometimes you have to like step back and be like, okay, where is this going now? Because this is not at all what I had planned. Um,
Exactly. So, how do you incorporate your previous experiences from writing your first two books into this book?
well, there's like a lot of things that I've learned since doing it, and like especially with publishing as well. Like, I never knew
Hmm.
about beta readers or alpha readers or ARC readers when I first started writing.
Hmm.
And it's all thanks to like TikTok and Instagram and like the bookish community that I've learned these things, which is amazing because I first started writing Broken Angel back in like 2011. So like way
Hmm.
before any of it was on any social media really. Um,
Right.
and so I've learned so much just through that community and like just regarding publishing things. And then I also just have learned um, my own processes too, like what works for me and what doesn't. Like forcing myself to write every day is not something that I've found I can do. So I don't put that pressure on myself anymore. I don't put like word count pressure either. I am trying to participate in NaNoWriMo this month, so it is like a little bit of a gets me going because I do need some kind of deadline or else it won't happen. Um,
Right.
but yeah, and then I worked with an editor for the first time for Forbidden Waves, so that was I learned a lot through that as well. Just
Mhm.
like different like uses of words and things that I hadn't realized that I commonly do over and over that I needed to stop. So
Yeah.
just yeah, most of those little things that I've learned. Um, yeah,
So, you publish these yourself, right? You are self published.
yeah.
What is that experience like?
It's pretty easy, like in the like right when you're looking at it like a nice step by step kind of thing. It's easy in
Hmm.
that regard. Marketing wise, it's very difficult. And
Yeah.
actually making sales, which I like most self-published authors will tell you, like it's a lot of work. And it's much harder than writing the book itself because
Hmm.
you have to find the right niche and the right readers and everything who actually will enjoy your books. But yeah, that's been the hardest part. But it was the first time I ever published. I used Barnes and Noble Press, and that's
Okay.
works pretty well. It's pretty easy. It's just like you upload the document, you upload the cover, and then you just put it out there in the web, and it's there to buy. And you can easily change if you ever needed to edit anything or edit the cover, you can
Hmm.
easily change it. And same with Amazon, because now I mainly use Amazon. Um, it's very simple to like figure it out. And then I've always done my own formatting as well. Like I just,
Hmm.
it's just easy for me, like, because I've always used computers, so it's easy for me to figure out those kinds of things. But you
Hmm.
know, a lot of people like will pay other people to format things, so it makes it a little easier. Um, but yeah, and then I have tried Ingram Spark as well, but that one is a little bit trickier. But that's if you want to like have your books in actual stores, you can do it that way, so they can
Oh,
distribute.
okay.
Yeah, which I haven't gotten to yet, but hopefully they'll be in my local Barnes and Noble at some point.
That's awesome. Yeah, that would be super exciting. I just can't imagine like what that feeling would be like when you walk into a store and it's just like there and you
Yeah,
see it. Like that has to be like a great feeling. I mean, even getting your book like physically like has to be a great feeling when you finally are like, wow, it's here. I did it. Like
yeah, it
that's
definitely
awesome.
is.
What have you found to be the most challenging about writing in the fantasy genre? I know you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but specifically, what do you think is like the most challenging part?
Fight scenes. I don't enjoy
Yeah.
writing fight scenes. Um, yeah, that's definitely the most challenging for me because in fantasy, there's always like some kind of chaos or war going on, so you have to write fight scenes. So I've learned a lot in that regard. I have my husband help me with it sometimes. He's a little more
Mhm.
knowledgeable than I am. Or I'll just like Google like sword fight scene and just like watch how they move and like Google like what terminology and stuff. But that's what takes the most work. Um,
Yeah.
and then also just like timelines, like even just the little things like how long does it take to travel this amount of miles on a horse or like those little things. That's
Yeah.
the
The
challenging
little
part.
things that you don't think about when you're reading it. Like I would have been like, oh yeah, sure. You could have put like 5 miles or 5 days and I'd be like, okay, yep. That's
Yeah,
how long it took. Exactly. But I like that. I like that you go into detail to figure out that. And it's accurate. It's not just like me. I'm like, gosh, she just made up that number. It's fine. Like I like that like I like that it's like legit. That's awesome. And then on the other hand, what do you enjoy the most about writing the fantasy genre?
enjoy the magic the most because it's like you can do anything you want. You know, there's no bounds to magic. Well, sometimes there is, but like if you want them to do something totally crazy, they can do it because they have magic. And so there's really not as many limitations as if you're writing
Right.
in the real world. Um, yeah, it definitely makes it a lot more fun.
Let's see. What is the best compliment you've ever received on your writing?
Someone actually did character art for Broken Angel. Just like they
That's
did it on
awesome.
their own, and that was like the best thing ever for me because I was like, oh my gosh, someone liked my book enough to draw the characters, like draw the scene.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and that was like a year ago, I think, and that was amazing. Like, that was, I was like, I peaked as an author. There we go. I have character art now. But yeah.
And then what was the toughest criticism you've ever received?
Um, Definitely. Let's see. I don't like because my books aren't as widely read yet. I don't receive a lot of criticism yet, which is nice, but also like you need the criticism so that you can grow. So Forbidden Waves was
Right.
the first time that I had like widely given it out to like a lot of people that I didn't know. So I did
Hmm.
get a little more criticism on that. Um, so I guess like that seeing that for the first time, like of people saying like, "Oh, this wasn't for me," or "This wasn't." So like, I've still never gotten anything that bad. Like even with Forbidden Waves, it
Hmm.
hasn't been that bad, which is great, and like I'm so
Yeah.
thankful because even though I say like, "Oh yeah, I can take it," it still does like it hurts your heart a little. You're like, "Oh, they didn't
Oh,
take
I'm
it."
sure.
But yeah, so but just specifically with Forbidden Waves, like there was just like people saying like, "Oh, the romance was too fast" or something. And like
Hmm.
I was like, "But it has to be like you have to." But like you,
Yeah.
there's some. It's just not for some people, and I just have to remind myself that and be like, "It's okay. I wrote it the way that I wanted it to be written, so it is what it is." Like so,
Exactly.
yeah. Thankfully, it hasn't been too like bad or anyone being mean, but yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Cause I know, especially on TikTok and Instagram, like people can be vicious. So I'm glad that you have avoided that so far.
I know.
Cause
Fingers crossed
I,
it's too far.
yeah. Because I can't even imagine, especially like something you put like your heart and soul into and you make it this beautiful creation. And then to hear like something bad about it is not always like the best.
Yeah.
Was this the first time you utilized like ARC readers and beta readers and all of that? Or did you use it for your other series as well?
So, the first time I used beta readers was for Unbound, but I only had very
Hmm.
few because I didn't realize that you needed like a lot and then only so many would actually do it. So I only had like a
Hmm.
few and then only like 2 or 3 people actually did it. So then for Disgraced, I
Got
did
it.
a little bit more. And I had the first time I had ARC readers was for Disgraced, which is book
Okay.
2, Unbound series. Yeah.
Hmm.
For
Awesome.
Forbidden Waves,
And
though,
what
I
is,
had a lot more.
yeah, a lot more, you said?
Yeah.
What is that experience? I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit, but what is that like experience like for the most part? Like having
It's
them read your book and
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like, it's scary because you're having like all new, fresh eyes on your work. But it is pretty cool too. Just like people want to read it. Like they volunteered to be ARC readers. Like, there's that many people
yeah.
that actually wanted to read my book before it's been like published or anything. So it is pretty cool. But it is scary too because you're like, what if
Hmm.
they hate it? What if everyone hates it? Like,
So
yeah,
how did you market that? Did you just do it through like TikTok and Instagram to get ARC readers or
yeah,
I don't know how it works, to be honest, just from what I like my end of it as the ARC reader. Like I know how
yeah.
that works, but I don't know how it works for like the author end of it.
Yeah, I did it on TikTok because I'd had success finding beta readers that way. So I was like, well, I might as
Hmm.
well do it. I got a few through Instagram, but I really don't get much traction on Instagram. But yeah,
Hmm.
so TikTok, I think I had 60 people sign up for the ARC reads for Forbidden Waves.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced writer's block and how do you deal with it?
There were times when I first started writing that I'd have writer's block for like months and I wouldn't write anything for months. And that was not fun. But I also wasn't like
Yeah.
super like writing is my like career. Whereas now I'm like writing
Hmm.
is my career. So if I hit writer's block, I got to work through it. But yeah, so when I do get writer's block, sometimes it's just a matter of switching which story I'm working on because I'm like, I
Hmm.
got nothing for this one anymore. Or sometimes I just have to like, I have a recorder that I use, and so like sometimes I just talk to myself on the recorder and just like work through something. Like, okay, well, I'm
Hmm.
stuck in this scene. What's going to happen next? So I'll like jump to a new scene and work on that instead. Um,
Okay.
and then sometimes I just take a break from writing for a week or so and just do some reading instead and just give it a rest because sometimes I do just get burnt out.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned working on a different story. How many stories do you think that you usually work on at one time?
Right now, I have 3 that I'm working on, which is
Okay.
the second book of Forbidden Waves, and then I have a dark fantasy that I'm working on, and then um, I'm thinking about like toying with the idea of doing just Castian's story before Unbound. So I started
Okay.
that, but it's very like not sure if I'm gonna actually follow through with it yet. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was all going on.
Awesome. So, what is your favorite line from Forbidden Waves? If you had to pick one line from the whole book, what is your favorite line?
I think it's the one when I don't know the exact like wording. I have it on a sticker actually, so I should know it. But
Wait, I think I have the sticker.
yeah,
And I actually it's one of the ones I wrote down. I think
yeah,
the don't mistake me for somebody who will bow to a man.
yeah. Just
Yes,
because
I
he
loved it.
expects
I
it.
actually wrote that down. I have a whole page of notes and I
Yeah,
actually wrote that quote down because I think that's my favorite quote too. And I
yeah,
do.
that's
Your
my favorite.
sticker's right here.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah,
have the bookmark too.
love it.
Love it. What do you do when a new idea jumps out at you while you're still working on a book? So, like if you are I guess you talked about writing multiple books at a time, but if you were literally writing a book and then all of a sudden you get an idea, do you stop what you're doing and chase that idea? Or do you kind of like jot it down and continue working on what you're working on? Like how does that kind of play out on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. usually I'll jot it down and then come back to it. But sometimes I do write short stories. So I have a short story that I wrote because I was like, oh my gosh, this is a really cool idea. So I just wrote a little short story on it. And then like recently decided, I think I want to make this into like an actual like full blown book. So so sometimes I'll do that. Or other like I do just have many notebooks that I just like will write down little things like, "Ooh, this is a really good idea." And it's the same thing. Like I have so many dreams. Like I have wild dreams sometimes. So I have a dream where I'll just be like, "Okay, this would make a really good idea for a book." So yeah, I just usually I jot it down and then I kind of go back to what I'm working on. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? I think that was the last of my questions. I'm going to go through them one more time.
Yeah.
And make sure I didn't miss any. But is there anything else that you would like to talk about specifically when it comes to your writing or habits or anything like that?
I'm just really excited for Forbidden Waves to come out on Friday and for everyone to get it.
Actually, I do have one more question.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything you would like people to take away from your book because it is coming out on Friday? Is there anything when reading it that you really want them to take away with them after they're finished?
I think that one of every time I think of this, it's like you're stronger than you think. And I don't know if you know the quote from Winnie the Pooh. It's like you're smarter than you think you are, and you're I don't know the whole thing, but that's what it reminds me of. And so I just want, like, especially for Viv's character, she was very prominent, and even though there's 4 main characters, but just like her journey, and just like you're stronger than you think, and you can get through it. Because yeah, I deal with a lot of anxiety and things, so I like to work that into my books so that other people can know that they're not alone, and they can get through it too. Because I've been in that place where you don't think you can get through it.
Yeah.
Just know that you can.
So then that brought me to another question. How was that like, writing her traumatic experience without giving away too many details? What was that like for you? Was that, without getting too personal too, like, was that something that like was healing towards you and your own personal traumas? Was it really tough to write? Like how did that feel, I guess?
Like, based on me, it's more just like fears that I have that I put into her. So it wasn't like too hard. It was more just like looking at it like closely and kind of seeing like, why do I have these fears? Like what is driving this? So it is kind of healing in a way too, because it's like, okay, if this ever did happen, like I might be able to get through it. Specifically because they talk of like the implant or the not being able to bear children, which is just like a fear that I'm sure a lot of people have.
Absolutely.
And that's why I put that trigger warning for this book, because like some people don't want to think about that. But yeah, so it's just like kind of examining those things. Whereas like in the past, like I do put a lot of like in Unbound and in Broken Angel, like I put very specific anxieties in there that I have dealt with. So this one was more just exploring things that more of fears rather than things that I've already dealt with.
Gotcha. Yeah. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you can think of that you want to talk about? Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with me and talking about this book. And thank you for letting me read this book because it was great. I really liked it a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. See you later.
So Forbidden Waves. Leah and Viv are desperate to save as many from the Siren Queen as possible. As mermaids, they intervene when the Siren Queen attacks a pirate ship, saving the infamous shape-shifting Captain Finn and his first mate, Jamie. Together, the 4 learn to gain each other's trust and gather an army to fight the Siren Queen before she becomes unstoppable. On the way, they experience the highs and lows of a dangerous journey. But the Siren Queen is on the hunt for more power. The sea has become too deadly, even for those who call it home. Can these four stop the Siren Queen, or will more foes get in their way?
Bound for the queen, bound for the queen.